Hello, I'm Graham Jones and welcome to Channel KT4 broadcasting live on Facebook and YouTube. You can join in by sending in questions during the show. Just press the comments button on the screen. Don't forget to click the like or share buttons. It's free. If you're watching on YouTube, please click to subscribe to Channel KT4. I'm so pleased to welcome to my virtual studio Alan Lenton. Now, Alan is the chairman of the Lest We Forget Association. Alan, thank you so much for joining me here today on Channel KT4.
Yes, good afternoon, Graham. Thank you very much indeed for inviting me today. I always enjoy talking about the association, and I do hope you'll find it interesting.
I'm sure we will find it interesting, Alan. I'm very much looking forward to this as well, because as you perhaps know, that I spent a little bit of my time in the armed forces, so I have an affinity with all charities that have got something to do with supporting our veterans. And I thought what I'd do, Alan, to set the scene for this particular association that you are the chairman of, I thought I would put out a little video for everybody to have a look at, just to set the scene. Here it is. In the clip we've just seen, Alan, it's Rudyard Kipling is mentioned as it's his poem actually that inspired your charity, Lest We Forget Association. And indeed, the poem has been set as a hymn, which is also associated with Remembrance Day. However, I was fascinated to learn that Kipling actually wrote the poem for Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee in 1897, Alan.
Yes, and when you travel the English-speaking world, you will see that phrase on all war memorials, in war cemeteries, and it is a phrase that everybody knows and we always use.
That's incredible, Alan. And so what's your background? Tell me something about you and why did you get involved in the association?
Well, it's a long story. In the 1920s and the 1930s, my father was a test driver at Bentley Motors. Part of his job was to drive long distances over weekends to test cars which had received a major overhaul. My mother always went with him, and then when I came along, I was wrapped up in a blanket and I went along as well. This carried on right until the war. And I have I've got a very, very modest claim to fame. I've been car sick in more Bentleys than anybody else in England. Anyway, having been brought up in a motor car environment, it was only natural that I would want to go into the industry. My father arranged for me to go to Rolls-Royce Limited as an apprentice, and that was a 5-year apprenticeship. When I reached 18, of course, national service was still in operation. So the government wrote to me and said, would you like to come and join us for a couple of years? And I gave it some thought. And I wrote back and said, no, I'm busy with an apprenticeship. I will contact you in due course. And so they simply said, we'll call you, don't call us. Anyway, at the end of my apprenticeship, I went back for further training. Then after a year, I was married. and my wife and I went to Geneva, where I was then running the Rolls-Royce dealership, the main one for the country. So that's my background. Now, when I was in Geneva, I was invited to join the Royal Air Forces Association because when I finished my apprenticeship, I did a 3-year engagement in the RAF. So when I went to Geneva, then I was invited to join the local association. And the Royal Air Force Association Swiss branch was very, very active, a great bunch of people. And we used to raise funds as much as we could for a home, an ex-RAF home in West Sussex called Sussex Down. And we set up shop, we sold pullovers, we sold T-shirts, we sold baseball caps, squadron badges, everything. And that gave me really the incentive to do voluntary work like that whenever I could. After 31 years in the country, we decided to come back to England for various reasons, and we bought a house in Epsom. It was a new house. We'd only been in the house about 2 days, and a letter dropped through the letterbox, and it said, "I'm your next door, I'm your back garden neighbour, and I'd just like to warn you that I'm going to have the fence replaced." So I rang the chap and said, "Right, come and have a beer and get to know you." When he came along, we had a beer, and he said, "What are you doing tonight? Would you be free to come to a committee meeting?" I said, "Yes." So that's when I joined the association. And that's way back, that must have been in the year 2000.
Oh wow! As you know, Alan, as I said, I've been in the military, and I was actually in the army, and with the Coldstream Guards at the end of my career, and I spent 40 years in the military in all. However, just to show that I have nothing against the Royal Air Force, Alan, we all love the Royal Air Force. You've flown all around the world.
You were a brown job.
yeah, you're one of the Brill Cream boys. Here we go. Right, so let's. I've got a little clip for you, and I just thought you might like to enjoy a little clip of a very shortened version, I have to say, of the wonderful Royal Air Force March Past. Here it is. Oh, there you go, Alan.
I've marched to that many, many times.
I'm not sure whether you marched to it at that particular pace, because that's quite a nippy tempo that the Royal Air Force Regimental Band performed there. When I heard it, when I was doing the research to find the track, I thought, Wow, that is quite a tempo that we've got it going at. But how long have you been the chairman of the Epsom branch of the Lest We Forget Association, Alan?
Well, it's been 17 years now, and we're only a small association, of course. There's only 15 of us, and I've got a wonderful vice chairman and a group of trustees who make sure that all that we do is agreed by everybody, and it's an enjoyable job to run the association. I've always enjoyed it.
And I presume you've also got a bunch of volunteers as well as part of the team?
Yes, we've got about 7 volunteers.
Well, that's absolutely amazing. So, Alan, how do you raise funds for your charity?
Right. Well, when I joined the association, raising funds was done by 2 methods. The first one was that we would pick snowdrops in the various grounds around Epsom. These were bunched up in 20s, and they were taken to various outlets, shops, the local library, and the hospital, and that sort of thing. And they were sold. I don't know how much. I think 20p a bunch, if I remember rightly. And that raised about each year about £1,700. That was one part of the fundraising. The other part was by a traditional street collection. I don't know if you've been involved in a street collection, but the amount of paperwork is mind-boggling. First of all, you have to apply for permission to collect in any one place. The reason for that, of course, is to stop 2 charities from bumping into each other. So we would raise about £3,000 for that street collection over 4 Saturdays in May. The amount of paperwork for that was quite daunting. For example, every collector had to have a card saying who they were, where they were collecting. Then afterwards, we had to submit results to the council, a complete list of everybody, their name and address, their postal code, and how much they collected, and the number of their tin. So that was quite a game. But I think the thing that really put the lid on it was that when we made a public collection, we then had to place an advert in the national press to say where we'd collected and how much we'd raised. And that advert alone cost sometimes £900. So a good bulk of our collections simply disappeared. Anyway, when I became chairman, I said, right, well, we'll stop it. The trustees we had at that time raised their hands in horror and said, good heavens, what are you going to do? How are we going to get money? And well, I was a little bit like Mr. Micawber in Charles Dickens, who said, something will crop up. And something did crop up. Now we are financially stable. And with regard to snowdrop collecting, well, volunteers at that time were in their 80s, and to see an 80-year-old struggling, walking through the snow, trying to pick snowdrops, I thought, well, that's got to stop. And so it did. But that had been a tradition in Epsom for many, many years.
All right, okay. I was amazed actually that when you were just talking to find out about the newspaper. I mean, I didn't realize. I mean, I've done a lot of fundraising in my time, particularly for organisations like the Army Benevolent Fund or the Royal British Legion and things like that. And I've done street collections, buckets and things like that. But I never knew. I mean, I wasn't the person actually doing the organising. I was just one of the team. I never knew that you had to put out a notice in the national press. I mean, that to me just seems an absolute waste of money.
Maybe well, I'm sure it's all changed now, but that's how it was when we collected.
Right. Okay. Well, that has kind of like taken me aback that a little bit. But can you tell me a little bit? Oh, I'll tell you what I have got here, Alan. I've got a nice picture, and this is one of your volunteers, I think, one of your helpers. And tell me something about this guy. This is Nick White. Now,
this chap is called Nick White. Whenever we had street collections, he lives in Dagenham in Essex. He would load his wheelchair into the car, drive all the way from Dagenham to Epsom, spend the whole of the Saturday, usually in a supermarket or somewhere like that, collecting. He was our star collector. He could raise nearly every tin that he had would contain about £70. And the amount that he raised for us was amazing. And he really was a great guy.
Wow, amazing. I mean, great that he's come all the way from Dagenham. I mean, it's quite a journey, isn't it, to come to Epsom and support the charity. So well done, Nick White, and thanks very much. And could you tell me a little bit about what your association does, Alan, in the way that it can support veterans, I presume? Could you just tell me a little bit about that? I'm really interested to know more.
Yes. The original remit was to entertain, and that's something which we still do. If I give you an idea of the last year, normal year before COVID, during the year, we would run approximately 33 river trips. We do and these are the two boats that we use. These boats are run by a charity called the River Thames Boat Project. The boat on the right, the Thames Venturer, is their original boat. That's an old Dutch barge that dates from about 1904. And it was then reworked to carry disabled passengers. The boat on the left is a new boat which was built to the specification of the charity. And that's the one that we now use. The larger boat is really now a static classroom for children learning about the river. But the one on the left, the Thames Discoverer, is the one that we use. And the boat will hold 12 passengers. So going back to what I was saying, we run in 2019, we ran about 33 river trips, 50 in-house events in the various homes, and then we supported a different number of different projects. And for example, we funded a party for 374 children of bereaved service families. We established a scholarship at the Open University for a disabled ex-service person. We funded laptops and video equipment in the Royal Star and Garter home. And we carried on, as we do every year, supporting a charity which is called Turn to Starboard. This charity trains ex-service personnel to be yacht masters. They follow a course where they're trained to take ocean-going boats and yachts. And when they've received their certificate, they can then get jobs in the marine industry, being skippers for private boats for people. And it's a very, very successful charity. And we funded that. And we really give them all our support. So that's roughly what we do.
Yeah. Okay. Alan, I've also got a picture here, and it looks to me as if tell me something about it. It looks like as if it's something like a lunch.
Okay. When we do the river trips, we take all ex-service people. The one you're looking at here is a group from RAF Headley Court, which is now closed. And the man on the right, second from the right, with like an orange and green tabs, he was a strange name. He was Warrant Officer. That was his surname, Warrant Officer. And the party there are one or two veterans receiving treatment at Headley Court, and the rest are a lot of the nursing staff who deserve trips just as much as the veterans have had. And on the trips, of course, we bring in an outside caterer who provides all the food and drink, and they have a really good day.
That sounds absolutely marvellous. You know, you just mentioned Headley Court there, and I remember when I was in service, I actually did have to go at one particular time to Headley Court, and it seems to me to be really sad that these places that were really specialising in looking after veterans, one by one, they're all going by the wayside, and everything's now going very much into the National Health Service. When I was a younger man, I was based at Woolwich, at the Woolwich Arsenal, at the barracks there, and just up the road they had built what was Queen Elizabeth Hospital, which was an amazing hospital specifically for military personnel and families, and it had the best specialist burns unit in the country. And I was amazed to find out that that no longer exists. It was then handed back to the NHS. It's sad because, you know, we did have the most incredible medical care. We still do have, because you've got places like Birmingham now that have got special wards within NHS hospitals, but we don't have specifically now hospitals which are designated for military personnel, unlike other countries in the world. Don't get me on that subject, Alan, but so I'm sure over the years, the needs... Sorry, go on.
I was invited to the closing ceremony at Headley Court.
Oh, okay.
A very moving ceremony. I had a fly past of Spitfires. It was quite an event. I
mean, it was an incredible place to look after veterans, which was really good. And talking about looking after veterans, as we know, that obviously the needs of veterans over the years have changed, and that means that the charities that support the veterans, they've got to move along with the time. So have you managed to adapt your support to meet the needs of veterans today?
I think the biggest change we've seen really concerns homelessness and drugs. I'm sorry to say that.
Yeah.
But there seems to be a link between the two. And some cases which we've heard of is that a serving soldier may be deployed overseas, say 9 months or something. When he returns, whilst he's away, his good lady, of course, gets rather lonely, and she seeks companionship. Then the veteran comes back home, goes home to be with his wife. The marriage starts to become a little bit difficult, goes on the rocks. Finally, she pushes him out of the home, and he suddenly finds he's homeless. When he's homeless, seems to turn to drugs and then to crime. And there are charities which have specific programs for helping these veterans back into work and back into society. One of those, of course, is the Poppy Factory, and we support them in their work. But that's been the biggest change, I think. Also, of course, you must realise that many years ago there were so many disabled ex-servicemen, but now with all the modern medical technology, there are many disabled veterans lead a perfectly normal life, something that wasn't able many years ago.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Alan. I mean, I know that homelessness and drugs, alcohol, which all follow on to crime, you're quite right, is very prevalent. And, on the streets of London, we know that there are a huge amount of veterans who are on the streets of London who are suffering with homelessness and, sadly, as you mentioned, drug abuse and alcohol abuse. And it's thanks to charities like you that support them in every way that you can. And also the other charities that are trying to bring them back into society and to get them to rebuild their lives. I think it's so important that all the military charities continue to do this work. And finally, Alan, I've got to ask, but we're talking about these various bits that the veterans who are having hard times are doing. But how has the association managed throughout this dreaded lockdown, and how have you managed to continue to support veterans? It must have been really, really hard, or it is hard. Thankfully, looking at the government announcements of only yesterday, we're a couple of weeks from getting some form of normality back. But you must have had a terrible 15, 16 months.
Yes, I think you could say that COVID-19 drove a coach and horses through our programs. Absolutely. Yeah. Last year, for example, I cancelled 33 river trips. I cancelled probably 40 concerts. And river trips at the moment, this year, just one is booked, that's all. But that's not stopped us. We've now doing all we can. We've set up another scholarship at the Open University. We've made big donations to various organisations to help them out. So we're doing a lot, if you like, financially, but we're not doing very much for the veterans at the moment. But one thing that we have done, every year we provide in-house concerts where 3 or 4 musicians will go into a home and give an impromptu concert lasting about an hour or so. And we know from the feedback that we have that that's really, really appreciated. Well, of course, this year and last year, the doors were closed. Our musicians couldn't even get by the front door. So what they've done this year is they've gone to the homes with all their equipment, they've asked for a PowerPoint, and they set up their instruments in the car park of the home, and they've asked all the residents to open their windows, and then they give the concert in the open air. And that's, so far, we've done 17 of those this year, and that's really bridging the gap between the two. Once the restrictions are released, then of course we can get back into the homes. That's a very important thing. If you're in a residential home, it's wonderful to have somebody come in from outside and a bit of music to cheer you up. Yeah. And residents, they all turn up with their medals and everything. It's wonderful.
Just something, Alan, I didn't know that that had been taking place. Being a musician myself, I'm always interested to see how other musicians are coping. I mean, I've been doing lectures and various things using the infamous and famous Zoom and various bits, but it's great news to listen to you saying that the musicians have managed to adapt and overcome so that they could still support the veterans who are in homes. And by, as you said, playing in the car park, people opening the windows, I think that's just ingenuity, and I think it's just really great stuff. Alan, look, thank you for joining me in my virtual studio here at Channel KT4. It's been amazing to chat with you and find out all about the incredible work and what the Lest We Forget Association do for our veterans here in Epsom and Ewell. Ladies and gentlemen, Alan Lenton, thank you very much, Alan.
Thank you very much, Graham, for inviting me. Thank you.
That's my pleasure. Every week, I give a little shout out to the wonderful advertisers who advertise in our Cuddingtonian. Today is the turn of Carpets for You. A big thank you to Holly and her team for their continued support of our local magazine, the Cuddingtonian. Thank you very much, Carpets for You. This is Graham Jones, and join me next Tuesday at 12:30 when I will be finding out a little bit about the great work of the Friends of Shadbolt Park and the Daylily Garden, which is open each weekday day between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock. That's every Saturday and Sunday throughout the month of July. So pop along this weekend and go and have a look at the wonderful lilies there. Until then, hopefully enjoy the sunshine. And so from now, it's Graham Jones saying bye now.